Summer workouts are already underway at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, but most fans don't realize how structured and how limited this time can actually be for the Buckeyes. We're going to go through what need to accomplish in their summer workouts going on right now as they lead into preseason camp. Welcome into the Buckeye Huddle Podcast. I am JR Rhoades. People call me JR, and we are going to be talking about the summer workouts for Ohio State this summer. Obviously, Ohio State does have some major questions that they need to address here in this summertime to, talk about it with players and figure things out. And the coaches need to have some answers with players as well. I think a lot of people, when they see summer workouts are happening and they hear about the players working out in the summertime, a lot of people just find this to be a time of like, oh yeah, they're just weight training with Mick and doing all that kind of stuff. And well, yes, weight training definitely is a huge part of what goes on in the summertime. There is also more that goes into the summer workouts than just, weight training and just getting in the weight room and doing some of that stuff. To talk about the 5 things that Ohio State needs to accomplish. They need to get done in their summer workouts, exactly what summer workouts kind of look like. Obviously, where, nobody knows exactly what the players are doing day to day and stuff, but kind of give you a general idea of what that looks like and what they're trying to accomplish. And, some of this is my opinion as well of what I think and what I would like to see Ohio State, the coaching staff, and the players accomplish with their summer to-do list is kind of what we'll call it here. So we're not just talking about lifting. We're talking about so much more. We're talking about scheme install. We're talking about players putting themselves in better position with position battles. We're talking about unit cohesion. There's a lot to get into in this episode. So let's get into it. All right. So if you are not aware of how workouts work in college football, essentially every team has 8 hours per week that they can work with players and get things done. A lot of times the coaches will, obviously do the 8 hours with them, but there will also be work on top of that is not required to get done, but it is definitely stuff that the coaches would like for you to get done. When I played in college, there were, lists of things that you had to accomplish each day, and then there were ways for the team leaders and stuff like that to check in on you, and then those team leaders would oftentimes report back to the coaches and let them know, hey, this guy's doing this guy's not doing that, and things how it goes. But in terms of time with the coaches and things like that, you have a max hours per week that you can work with the coaches. You have a maximum of 2 hours per week. That is like film review, schematic teaching. This is like the classroom meeting type of scenario situation. And typically the teams will work on that maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and the timing will vary. Sometimes it's 45 minutes, sometimes it's as much as an hour and a half. It just kind of depends on how the teams work their schedules and when position coaches and coordinators want to work with the players to do those types of things. The other 2 hours in the week that the teams have is for on-field non-contact. So you can be on-field working on things, but this is a non-contact, more kind of skill instruction type of scenario. We're talking no pads, no helmets, but for somebody like, the offensive line, who we'll talk about here in a minute, this is very important stuff because it does offer you more time to, number one, work on your footwork. Number 2, work as a cohesive unit, get out there together with the coaches, and the coaches can kind of see, okay, maybe this guy's working better with this guy next to him. Maybe this guy's working better in this scenario. You don't truly know until the bullets actually start flying. You actually got somebody across from you, but still give them somewhat of a better idea. And then the remaining 4+ hours, however much time they have after that, because again, these are just like the maximums. Long teams can do this kind of stuff, is spent weight training with the strength and conditioning coach of your team. So obviously Mick, the strength and conditioning coach at Ohio State, he is dedicated, and his staff, guys like Anthony Schlegel on it and stuff, that are working players to make sure they get them weight training. And a lot of times these players will do more weight training than what time they have with the strength and conditioning coach. This is not saying that players can only work out for 4 hours a week, strength and conditioning. This is saying that the time that Mick has with the players is about 4 hours a week, sometimes give or take, a little bit more. depending on what they do with the other hours with, schematics and on-field non-contact type of stuff. And then you see the players do a ton of 7-on-7 things like that together. I mean, just kind of fun stuff depending on which team you go to. Like if you're going to go look at an Ohio State team, do this. This is very intentional time. This is time where the leaders are leading. They are making it very intentional. This is off player-led type of stuff because you don't have restrictions on this. If you're going to a team that's not as intentional, I hate to call out teams that aren't as good, but a Wake Forest or a Boston College or a Purdue or something like that, this is going to be time where it's kind of just probably not as structured by the players and the leadership of the team. They're kind of just out there doing a little bit more kind of fun stuff or just like messing around, having a good time out there, which is not necessarily a terrible thing, building team camaraderie and stuff. But, these players, if they're together, they don't want to miss out on getting better and having cohesion and stuff. And so a program like Ohio State, you're going to see time like this be led by the players and be very intentional with where players are lining up. And sometimes you might even get coaches saying, okay, when you go to 7-on-7, let's make sure we put Kyle Parker in the slot, or let's make sure we give Devin McEwen some. Let's make sure we put Jermaine Matthews Jr., against Jeremiah Smith or something. These are all examples. I'm not saying that this is what's actually being said to them, but the Ohio State structure for the workouts kind of goes in 3 phases. The way things work is they have the early summer, which is now kind of through like mid-July type of time. This is the foundation phase of it all. This is when you're very heavy into the strength training, the conditioning. Right now with coaches on the road, official visits happening, you're going to see the max time of like the schematics and the on-field non-contact stuff utilized less than you see the other kind of stuff utilized. Strength training, conditioning, that kind of stuff is going to be utilized a whole lot more. I've heard some people say that Ohio State can even get up to sometimes even 5 or 6 hours sometimes in June, kind of making this stuff happen. So that'll go until about early to mid-July there. The mid section of the is when it's kind of like early to late, mid to late July. This is when you start to see a little bit more of the competition, the refinement phase. This is also when some coaches are going on vacation more and stuff, getting some more time away from the program. And so you are getting some time with them, but you're also getting away with your family, whatever else it might be. You're going to get more on-field skill work and position battles, kind of get into things a little bit with the cohesion and stuff like that. But there, when I say position battles, nobody's position is going to be decided in summer workouts. All of this is working toward the position stuff. I shouldn't say nobody. It's very unlikely that somebody is going to claim a position in summer workouts and stuff like that. Maybe if you're like an Iron Buckeye or something like that, that can definitely put you in a better spot and almost for sure give you the opportunity there. Because you have a really great summer does not mean more often than not. It does not mean that you are going to lock down a position battle or anything. And then late summer, this is right before August, sometimes early August, because Ohio State, their preseason camp is going to start on August 6th. So you'll see a little bit of this into August as well, but kind of late July into early August time. This is when you really see the sharpening of everything. And this is when you see the players actually get ready for preseason camp a lot too. This is when they're going to be looking at depth charts a whole lot more, kind of identifying those position battles a little bit more before the pads come on and they get into things. So with that being said, and with all that information out there, let's 5 things that Ohio State is going to need to accomplish in the summer workouts this offseason. Number 1, they need to solve the offensive line. Again, they are not going to completely solve this, but they do need to have a better idea of what's going on with the offensive line at this point in time. This remains, to me, the biggest question mark of the 2026 roster. Spring practice hampered them with injuries and uncertainty around the tackle position as well. Obviously, he is really good at tackle last season, but anybody you ask and anybody who watches football regularly is going to know he is not somebody that's going to be an offensive tackle at the NFL level. And if you really want to elevate this offensive line, you're going to find somebody who is more of a natural tackle, and you're going to slide Saravelt either into the inside or whatever else. Can Austin Saravelt be out there at tackle and you have a very good offensive line in college? Yes, you can, but it's not, it's not ideal, I guess is the best way to put it. What you're really looking for is you're looking for Ian Moore to make that push to become the left tackle. You want to see that strength training, you want to see that conditioning, get him in a better spot to there, and you want to see that cohesion with whoever he is next to at the left guard position. Most likely Luke Montgomery, but they're going to try some different things in and out, especially with a new offensive coordinator that does have more of a focus on the offensive line. Tyler Bowen, same offensive line coach as last season. Arthur Smith, I don't think it was a mistake by Ryan Day or just a coincidence that he went out and hired an offensive coordinator with a lot of offensive line experience, because Tyler Bowen did not come in to be, this phenomenal offensive line coach. He came in to be the recruiter, to get the recruiting fixed and get the recruiting right. If you pay attention to what's going on in the recruiting trail right now for the offensive line, he is doing that. But this is definitely a situation where, and you even look at the help he got last season with the two assistant offensive line coaches. I believe it was Arkansas and Purdue when they were there. This is a situation where Tyler Bowen, his job primarily is to bring the players in, let Arthur Smith work with those players and get them up to speed. Does that mean that Tyler Bowen is not the offensive line coach? No, of course not. Tyler Bowen is the offensive line coach. Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator, but this is going to provide a lot of assistance for Tyler Bowen because, quite frankly, it just wasn't good enough last year. You had a really good regular season, but then you started to see stunts and you started to see things happen against teams like Purdue and UCLA that kind of gave you, some concern, especially with teams of those caliber. You should not have had as much. I don't want to say like it was not good, but you started to see some of the weaknesses of how Ohio State responded to defensive line movement in front of them, confusing them, making those things happen. And then you just so happen to face Indiana, who was one of the best movement defensive lines in the country last season. And then you face Miami, who was very creative, but also was fantastic at just straight pass rushing as well. And in those games, you allowed 10 sacks in the final 2 games of the season after being, pretty much elite for the year. But you didn't face elite coaching. You didn't face elite strategy like you did with the other guys. And when people bring up Texas, yes, Texas, but that was also Pete Kwiatkowski, who was more of a back end type of guy. Now with Will Muschamp coming in for Texas, he's more of a front type of guy who is going to be more creative. And so it is going to be a really good test for Ohio State against guys like Colin Simmons and stuff like that for this Texas team. So we'll see what the offensive line looks like. We'll see kind of what happens here. I would love if Ian Moore can come out of the summer as an Iron Buckeye or something like that. I think that's going to be fantastic for them. But really, you're looking to get that starting 5, assembled. And if they can get a starting 5 of like Ian Moore, Austin Seyerveld, Luke Montgomery, Carson Hensman, and either Josh Padilla or Phillip Daniels, to me, that would be fantastic to get something like that to happen. It's not a bad thing to have 6 guys. They're probably going to do some of the rotating and stuff, I would imagine, again this year with Josh Padilla and stuff. And, with the guys that got hurt in the spring, that made some issues, but for trying to figure things out. But we're going to need to make sure that we figure more out in the summer workouts and also see who is able to work out, who is able to really get in the weight room, build up the strength and everything else. And Ian Moore is going to be a huge piece of that. All right, number 2. This is where, to me, backup quarterback is not necessarily like anybody's biggest priority out there. But I do think for the future of Ohio State, I'm not saying this is more of a priority than other stuff. I'm just saying number 2 on my list is that Tavian St. Clair needs to really develop and become the clear backup quarterback to Julian Sayin. I love that Ryan Day brought in Justin Martin this offseason, the experienced quarterback from UCLA. He was possibly going to start at Maryland this past season, but Malik Washington, the true freshman, beat him out. Now he comes on over to Ohio. Justin Martin is a guy who does have some wheels, and I'm not saying that he Terrell Pryor out there or anything like that, but he can scramble. He does use his legs a little bit when he needs to, and he is a bigger athlete type of guy. So he really is a guy who, if Tavian St. Clair doesn't continue to improve and develop, he is the type of guy who will be that backup that is kind of Tavian St. Clair-esque. So this was a huge battle for Ryan Day to bring in Justin Martin in the offseason to battle with Tavian St. Clair and continue to push him. Make sure he knows that, hey, yes, last season you were freshman, you were developing, get that together. That's fine. But now's the time to come in. Dude, you're number 2 here. You got to be that dude. You got to be the guy that's going to be able to come in and replace Julian Sayin if anything happens. And Julian Sayin is going to be a huge part of this offense, obviously. Heisman finalist last season, had a record-setting year, 77% completion percentage, over 3,600 yards, 32 touchdowns. He's going to be very good this season. To me, he's one of the top 5, top 3 quarterbacks in all of college football. I personally think he's the best. I don't think you can have a serious opinion if you have him outside of the top 5 in college football. I've seen some people have Arch Manning over him. I just don't think you're a serious football mind if you have Arch Manning over Julian Sayin in your football rankings going into the season. You want to predict that Arch Manning is better at the end of the season? Okay, that's fine. You want to make that prediction. I don't think anyone would have watched Texas last year and said, yep, that's a better quarterback, Arch Manning, than Julian Sayin was. I don't think that's a serious opinion. So we'll see what happens. I do think Julian Sayin is most likely going to exit for the NFL draft after this season. There's going to be a lot of talk about his size and everything else, but with Ohio State trying to bring in a guy like Trey Taylor to flip and come in to Ohio State, and you have a guy like Tavian St. Clair there, you're just not in a position to where you can always like just be fine with paying all of these players at your quarterback in your quarterback room. So holding one guy like Tavian St. Clair, who was a 5-star, I think he was the number 2 quarterback in the rivals class behind Bryce Underwood, you're just not going to be able to hold that many guys in your quarterback room. You can't hold Julian Sayin, Tavian St. Clair, and Trey Taylor next season, or Brady Edmonds for that matter. If it's Brady Edmonds instead, he's the one that's currently committed, so he'd probably be the one, but I don't know if that's going to last. We'll see what goes on there. There's still a whole lot of stuff I'm not predicting that's going to happen, but there's still a whole lot more to figure out in the quarterback position there. So, but as far as I'm concerned, it needs to be established who the number 2 guy in the quarterback room needs to be Tavian St. Clair. Not saying he's going to win it in the summer workouts, but I do think he needs to start setting himself above a guy like Justin Martin and make sure he takes a hold of that second spot so he is ready to come in and be the starter after Julian Sayin likely, we'll see what happens, but likely leaves for the NFL. Number 3, transform the special teams. Special teams has been a reoccurring weakness for Ryan Day for years now. Now, 2 years ago when they won the national championship, it was a big plus. They did a good job getting Caleb Downs back there and other returners as well. But this last season, it wasn't like the return game was bad, but you did have some fumbles, you did have some mishaps, and then obviously the kicking situation. I don't need to tell anybody about the kicking situation, but you bring in a guy like Connor Hawkins, you bring in a guy like Robbie Disher from Illinois. So Connor Hawkins, your new kicker, Robbie Disher from Illinois, the special teams coordinator and tight end coach there at Illinois. Illinois had some good special teams this past season. They were able to block some punts and things like that under Robbie Disher when he was there. Connor Hawkins is a guy who is much more clutch. His time at Baylor was good. And then I do think that everybody's kind of sleeping on the addition of Dalton Riggs from UCF. Now, if you look at Phil Steele's Big Ten, all Big Ten teams, he's number 1 in Phil Steele's all Big Ten teams. And Ryan Day said that he believes they have the best long snapper in the nation in Dalton Riggs. So you brought over Dalton Riggs from UCF, who for apparently Ryan Day's money is the best long snapper in the nation. And I think that matters a whole lot as well. I don't think people realize how much a really good long snapper, somebody over the laces just right, who can deliver things just right to the holder and everything else, really does matter for somebody. And Joey McGuire is somebody who's also going to be receiving snaps from Dalton Riggs, and it's going to be huge for him to be able to make a big impact as well. All right, moving on to number 4, integrating the defensive portal in building depth. You have a lot of defensive portal additions because you lost a lot of talent to the 2026 NFL draft. Everybody knows about Caleb Downs. Everybody knows about Arvo Reese and why am I blanking on his name right now? Styles. Not Lorenzo Styles, Sonny Styles. I don't know why I blanked on his first name there for a second, but Sonny Styles, everybody knows about them and losing them, but you also lost Caden McDonald. You also lost Caden, also lost obviously Caleb Downs. You also lost your cornerback last season as well. Boy, I'm blanking all these names right now. Davison Igbinosun, I don't know. Iggy, I don't know why I forgot that one as well, but I just got my mind on all these new guys that the old guys, they go in one and they come right back out the other after they're drafted. But no, just joking there. But you do have a lot of new transfers here, and I think Matt Patricia, like, while I don't think the talent on this defense is obviously up to par with what it was last season, I do think that some people are going to sleep on the fact that Matt Patricia is going to be able to kind of map out exactly what defense he wants. And I think one of the reasons why you brought so many defensive players in, I think this past offseason, I heard a lot of Ohio State people talk about how, like, this is the new plan for Ohio State, and this is what they're going to do now. They're going to just go into the transfer portal all the time. Maybe I don't think that is something that Ryan Day wants to do as much. I think he will probably do it a little bit more often than he was after seeing how much success Indiana had with older players and stuff. So I do think that could be something, but I also think a lot of it was just that Matt Patricia said, okay, look, you recruited to Jim Knowles' defense before, and Matt Patricia's defense is not the same as Jim Knowles' defense. So if Matt Patricia is going to come back, Ohio State needs to show investment into getting in the players that Matt Patricia wants, the players that fit Matt Patricia's system, and guys like James Smith with his ability to play both 1-tech and 3-tech, John Walker and Quay Rousseau with his, kind of off-ball linebacker, also edge a little bit, his ability. Christian Allegro, he was a really good pass rusher last season, didn't do it enough for Wisconsin, but he was somebody who was really good at getting to the quarterback, and so it's going to be interesting to see what Matt Patricia does with him. And then Earl Little is somebody that I think a lot of Ohio State fans are going to be saying the name of next season. Do I think he's like the best safety in the nation or anything like that? No, he's not Caleb Downs, but he is somebody who's a versatile piece that does help with that versatility of what Caleb Downs kind of was able to be. I think that that's something that not people took into account, is that when you lost Caleb Downs, you had to go and get somebody who could be as versatile as Caleb Downs was and do as many different things. Look, Earl Little was going to go to the NFL draft. Ohio State got him to not go to the NFL draft. He got his information back and said, I think I can do better than this. And Ohio State said, yeah, we can have you do better than this. Come on over to Ohio State. He goes into the transfer portal. Obviously, went in the transfer portal before Ohio State talked to him, I guess, whatever. Not making any reports here or anything like that, but he goes into the transfer portal and Ohio State says, look, come here. We're going to turn you into a much, much better NFL draft prospect. And he buys it. He's coming to Ohio State. And I think he's going to be a much better prospect than he was. You also got Terry Moore, obviously the safety from Duke that everybody likes to talk about. And then Cam Calhoun and Dominic Kelly, two cornerbacks that are coming in. Dom Kelly, more of a younger type of cornerback coming in from Georgia. I think these are guys that fit more of Matt Patricia's type of system, the more of the versatility, the varied fronts that he likes to work with. I think that you're going to see a lot of these guys multiple different ways, and you're going to see kind of the cornerstone of the defense this season. Not the exact cornerstone, because it's hard to do that as a defensive lineman, but in some ways your cornerstone a little bit is going to be Kenyatta Jackson. He's going to be somebody that Matt Patricia relies on a lot to know what to do and to be out there and to lead this defense, and it's going to be huge for him. So we'll see what it looks like with instituting all this stuff, but I do think that the mass amount of guys that they added in through the transfer portal was not just, a different strategy that they're now implementing. I do think it was more of Matt Patricia coming in and going from the Jim Knowles to the Matt Patricia type of system. And I do think Matt Patricia wants to be here longer than just 2 years. We'll see if that turns out. Obviously, you get offered the Chip Kelly NFL contract type of deal, and it's hard to say no to that. But I do think Matt Patricia wants to be here longer than just 2 years. And if that's the case, then I think you're seeing Ohio State invest in making that happen. And finally, number 5, this is no shock to anybody, installing Arthur Smith's offensive scheme. So Arthur Smith, one of the things that he's going to do, obviously, the use of tight ends is something that Ohio State has already done, but he's going to bring in a whole lot more creativity to the offense. He's going to bring in a whole lot more under the center RPO type of action, things like that. They're going to have different run block schemes, different pass blocking schemes. They're going to work on so many different things with the offensive line that Arthur Smith is going to institute. And then also what wide receivers are going to work best for his offensive scheme, because under Brian Hartline, you had no wide receivers taken on the transfer portal. Now you got Kyle Parker, McEwen. I mean, you've got Brandon Ennis, who's still there. Jeremiah Smith is the best wide receiver in the country. I'm probably leaving somebody out here at this point, and somebody's going to say somebody in the comments that I left out, so I apologize. But the point is, there's a whole lot of different options here. And so how does Arthur Smith want to utilize this? And I do think that you're going to see more blocking, more run blocking from the wide receivers this season. It's going to be a fantastic thing to see. We saw it was a thing that they struggled with when Brian Hartline was the offensive coordinator in 2023, got much better with Chip Kelly in 2024. You go back to Brian Hartline as the offensive coordinator in 2025. It's something they struggle with again. I don't think that this is going to be an offense that is going to cater to the wide receivers, but I do think this is going to be an offense that creates some really good all around wide receivers who are going to be expected to do a lot of stuff. So, you know what? Bring in the Derrick Henry style offense and we'll be good to go. Arthur Smith, let's make it happen. Obviously, pretty big shoes for Bo Jackson to be Derrick Henry. I'm not saying that by any means, but it's definitely going to be very interesting to see all this happen. So we'll see what it looks like for the Buckeyes in the summer workouts and what they come out with as the preseason camp starts off on August 6th. Don't forget, you can buy tickets to go to the first 3 practices, August 6th, 7th, and 8th, and go there and see it for yourself. Down in the comments if you are going to any of those, and if you have something that you think Ohio State needs to work on, you would like to add to the Ohio State summer to-do list, let us know down in the comments below. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to the Buckeye Huddle podcast. We'll see you next time.